institutions experience in diverse sectors, including the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the ICICI Bank India, the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing, and the Sri Lanka Foundation. And he serves as the Faculty of Member Management Consultant at the Postgraduate Institute of Management of the University of Sri Jayewardenepura since the year 2016. At the Sri Lanka Foundation during the year 2012 and 15, he was the chairman of the Board of Examiners and was in the Board of Study. He was the Director of Studies of Sri Lanka Institute of Training and Development during the year 2012 to 2014. At the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Sri Lanka, he has contributed as the co-chairman of the Great Human Resources Practices in the year 2017 and the chairman of the Great HR Practices in the year 2018. He has served as the co-chairman of the International Symposium of Innovative Banking organized by the Bank of Ceylon, Sri Lanka, 2019 and 20. He's graduated from the University of Kelaniya with a special degree in HRM and MBA from PIM and PhD from Infrastructure University of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He holds a certified professional marketer Asia, practicing marketer Sri Lanka status, and a certified human resource development auditor from TBRLS India. And he's a regular speaker, panelist, and a moderator, reviewer, and a human resource development trainer in a number of international conferences and institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator for our panel discussion for today, Dr. Samantha Ratnayake. And now may I hand over the floor to Dr. Samantha Ratnayake to take over the proceedings.
Welcome to exploring this topic of future of work. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joining here physically. We have a diverse panel here, but I'm sure the audience is joining from all over the world. So thank you very much for joining here, and welcome once again for this panel discussion. So we have a wonderful 1 hour to explore this fascinating topic. So in that light, if I set the tone, the modalities that each panelist would bring their perspectives to the topic in a broader perspective in like 3 to 4 minutes at the early stage. And then of course we'll build from their discussion. And the latter part, we are going to look at the future aspect, the future of work, which you are very much looking for. And at the same time, overall, so they would bring a couple of closing messages and these messages at the end. So as far as the research symposium is concerned, before handing over the mics to the relevant panelists, so may I say that setting the tone from a research point of view. So we are looking at 2020, so the coronavirus infected diseases 2019, which is impacting in 2019, the 2020. So if you look at the key dynamics in this decade, particularly up to 2020, the past decade of technological advancement, the looming possibility of mass job displacement, so untenable skill shortages, the competitive change, the unique nature of human intelligence, now it is being challenged by artificial intelligence. The coming decade, that is, we are referring to the future, particularly will require purposeful leadership and of course future of work that fulfills human potential and creates broad shared prosperity. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we know that with all those prospective aspects and the opportunities, the pandemic is now impacting. So the growing income inequality, the technology-driven displacement of jobs, the rising societal discord in the global scale. So if you look at the combined health and economic shocks, particularly from last year to now, and the economy is into free fall, disrupted labor markets, so fully reveal inadequacies of our societal contracts, and particularly these millions of the losing of livelihoods and the job losses and the risks at global scale. So with that, if you look at the current experience which we are now operating in this, the threatening of livelihood of those at the lower end of the income strata, particularly, that spectrum is quite wide, and the billions of workers have experienced changes which have profoundly transformed their lives within and beyond the world. And of course, we are looking at the well-being and the productivity of the workforce. And with that, we are very much intrigued to look at the future, that is the developing and enhancing human skills and capabilities through education, learning, and meaningful work, the key drivers of economic success and individual well-being and social cohesion. So with that, if you look at today, the keynote speaker, the main speaker, the president, and the conference chair have set the tone and set the dynamics for this. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, now context is ready to explore this fascinating topic. So to begin with, in the opening remarks, may I invite first Professor Dharmasiri to set the tone from a macro and conceptually the holistic picture. With that, we'll take it on. Professor Dharmasiri, over to you.
Nature-made crisis, there can be man-made crisis. In fact, Sri Lanka had been witnessing so many crises if you look at the past. If I remember 2004, Boxing Day tsunami was a nature-made crisis where we had to go through intense discomfort. And if you look at 2019, Easter Sunday bombing attack, there is clearly a man-made crisis where we had to go through a huge discomfort. And the current pandemic, the planetary pandemic, still we are debating whether it's a man-made crisis or a nature-made crisis. That question, that ambiguity is still remaining. I'm sure they will find the solution very soon. So the point is, Dr. Samantha, in this scenario, I would like to refer to the Chinese word for crisis, Wei Ji. In fact, it is American linguist Benjamin Zimmer who analyzed the two characters of the word crisis, the Wei Ji. He said the Wei means opportunity, G means danger. Every crisis has an opportunity dimension. Every crisis has a danger dimension. So it's interesting to see COVID-19 had become a huge opportunity for pharmaceutical industry to thrive. In fact, the vaccine developers, it was a huge $1 billion industry, huge opportunities for the new normal, the technological advancement. At the same time, it's a huge threat, it's a huge danger where the human life is threatened. So you see the opportunity dimension and the threat dimension coming very clearly. So what could be the management response? What could be the HR response? I would argue if it's an opportunity, we need to look at opportunity in 3S manner. Sensing an opportunity, sizing an opportunity, seizing an opportunity. We need to put our antennas up and looking for opportunity, sensing the opportunity. Simply because opportunities are there in the environment, that doesn't mean that they all are really feasible. So we need to quantify, we need to evaluate. That is the sizing part. And if the size fits, then you need to seize it. You need to grab it before your competitors do. That is the seizing part. So sensing an opportunity, sizing an opportunity, seizing an opportunity. That is the management decision making with regard to crisis, with regard to the opportunity dimension. The other side, the danger side, the threat dimension. I would argue it's a AAA approach. First, we have to acknowledge that there's a threat. The biggest problem, Dr. Samantha, is that a lot of leaders, they just live in a comfort zone. They don't acknowledge that there's a threat. I'll give you a global example and a local example. When there was this threat from South Korea with Samsung coming in a big way, when Nokia global directors at their global conference, it was the global marketing director of Nokia that alerted the global chairman that Samsung is coming in a big way. The global chairman just scoffed at it and neglected that, and they had the last laugh. And we know what happened to Nokia. So that is a global example. I know in a Sri Lankan multinational where I was closely working, where they were having a toothpaste, which is a dominant product in the market. And there came from nowhere a locally produced toothpaste with a clove oil flavor. And then I still remember having a chat with the R&D manager who said, it will never be a success because clove oil had never been tested and proven as a tooth protector. But he was wrong. It did not take even 6 months for them to have a huge dent in their market share, whereas the new product was a sensationally attractive product to the consumer. So we have to acknowledge that there's a threat. So the first point is acknowledging the threat around. Second point is to evaluate or act or assess. You need to have the clear comprehension of the nature of the threat, the level of the threat, the degree of the threat. And then you have to address it, take the right appropriate action. So acknowledge the threat, assess the threat, and address the threat. The best example comes, Dr. Samantha, from the aviation industry. If you take a typical airline pilot, say when a flight is moving, say up in the air, and then when there's a turbulence, of course, if you have flown, I'm sure you would have heard this very common message. There's a message saying, there's a turbulence, please return to your seat belts and fasten your seat belts. So captain has switched on the seat belt sign. So that is the first message. And then the pilots assess the level of threat with the turbulence. And if the level of threat is very high, the second message comes, cabin crew, please return to your seats, please stop serving. And then that shows that the level is much higher. And of course, if the level is very, very serious, you might not get a third message. Third message will not come. So that is the level where you need to acknowledge, assess, and address. So let me summarize. With regard to opportunity dimension of a crisis, you need to sense it, size it, and seize it. Whereas if it, say, with regard to the threat dimension, you need to acknowledge it, assess it, and address it. So coming to the COVID scenario, I think we have both sides. So I think it's a good opportunity for HR professionals to look at the opportunity dimension, look at the threat dimension. I know what Airbnb has been doing anyway, not having a formal office, not having an assigned desk and a table. Anybody could sit anywhere using your laptop, and your laptop is your office. I think that has become a reality for us with working from home, telecommuting, virtual meetings, and all sort of things. So those are huge opportunities. At the same time, the threat dimension affecting the human lives, the dilemma of balancing lives on one side, livelihoods on the other. So how to have this subtle balance? So lots of thinking needs to be done, lots of fresh approaches needs to be obtained, and we need to do things differently.
Thank you, Professor Dharmasiri, for setting the tone. And it's very clear in terms of sensing, sizing, and seizing. I'm sure the audience would be very much looking forward to look at the aspects of particularly the sizing, the seizing opportunity aspects. Also, the acknowledge, assess, and addressing, how we are going to address. But in the first round, let me go to, from the professor's holistic view, to Dr. Samita, from a CEO's perspective. What is your opening remarks, Mr. Pera, Dr. Pera?
Thank you, Dr. Samantha. I take this opportunity to thank Professor Prasadini for inviting me here. I totally agree with Professor Ajant. I think there's no debate. It's clearly mentioned, it's a crisis is a crisis. So they accept the crisis as a crisis. There's, I mean, the biggest mistake sometimes the companies, organizations do is you don't really see what's happening in the market. And if you really go back to the basics of how do you craft your business strategy, you start from the market and you understand your macro factors. And this is a crisis that we are getting, a change in the environment that we are working, and which is a part of your regular business strategy. The only question here is, though organization has the business continuity plans, emergency responsive plans, but we have not seen this as this gravity, and is a global crisis. And how it's really happening is like, you will see that it will impact the country to country differently. And if you are a global organization, then again, how it's impacting versus a local organization is different. So you get to understand how does it really impact the industry that you're operating in that particular country. And when you see that industry is impacting it, and then you go back to your organization, and how do we operate ourselves in this kind of a changing environment? in this kind of a crisis we are going through. And then you will stem from you will challenge your strategy of your operating. And as example now today, like you are talking about globally, dollars of 4 trillion impacting the tourist industry. As Professor was rightly talking about, the pharmaceutical industry the other way. Like they will gain probably trillions of dollars to that industry. So it's an opportunity as well as the threat that you measure it. So then the problem is that organizations don't really get these numbers right, the analysis right. They go into panic situations. And if you really look at it from micro point of view, there's a market issue where that your consumer inability to reach your product, or that he's inability to really purchase that product. And from the organization point of view, it's a people issue. It's a people issue, like you people can't work, your employees can't work in the organization, and that you need to look at from that point of view. And unfortunately, some of the organizations have really moved into a level, the last option to do act like now. So start restructuring it and looking at this as an opportunity to really resize the organization and cutting down the cost. And when you have a people issue down the line, and when you really do the harassment for that particular segment, you will never come out of this issue. So it's a leadership of the organization to see what is our strategy to operate in this kind of environment, and how do we really operate. So if you're a tourist industry that your capital is being employed for, let's say, huge chain of hotels. So how are you going to operate it? Can we really rechange our strategy of operating? Can we really look at it, changing our dynamics, our business strategy to a different level? Now, example is some of the hotels are really surviving the quarantine kind of options they have. So they're surviving it. There's an opportunity that you can get it. Yes, the tourist industry has impacted, but still that you can have it. Now, I have seen some of the 5-star hotels, they have started door-to-door operations. And you have to understand, as Professor was rightly saying, you got to understand there's a problem. And then see backwards, how do you really survive in this, the bad patch that we are going through. So it's a survival game at the moment on that. So some organizations is an opportunity that you really grab it and move on, but the industry is impacted heavily, the survival. And I firmly believe, like, you have to get your strategy right and not make a long-term issue out of the short-term issue. So as I said earlier, unfortunately, organizations are making a long-term issue over a short-term issue that we are going through. So that's something that, we have to really look at it. And so we'll discuss later, like, what kind of elements that you have to look at it from HR perspective and from the business perspective. So my summary, my point here I'm driving is how organizations should look at it on a business strategy point of view. It's not you looking from the operational point of view. If you look at it from operational point of view, you will lose the opportunity. So it's a strategy to the market that, what you should do in this kind of a turmoil environment, in a bumpy environment, and then work backwards. Look at your model of the operation, look at the opportunities for the market, and then drive. You have your assets. You have been working well last so many years, and therefore that culture that you are looking at it, the capability of your people, all that there. So it's a risk skilling your talent for your new strategy of new operation that you're working in, and then move forward. And that's my initial thoughts on this.
Thank you, Dr. Samitra. I think you are bringing the strategic agenda into the forefront and looking at both outside in versus inside out, and how we are going to make it the strategy in line with the short-term and the long-term game plan. So we'll come back. I think you are opening up a lot of horizons in that light in the second round. So from a CEO's point of view, Mr. Vijay Kumar, this is ideal time for us to look at in your opening remarks. From a director HR, now it's getting down in the process. It's over to you, Mr. Vijay Kumar.
Thank you, Dr. Samanta. I will get into this crisis in two ways of prompting two. One is how, at the national research point of view, how do we look at this problem?
Sorry, you need to keep close. You need to keep close.
Okay, close. Okay. So I will look at crisis into two-pronged approach. One is from the national research point of view. The other one is as an HR professional, how an HR professional will look into the crisis. What are the challenges? So from a research point of view, in Sri Lanka, we are not assessed how many, people are laid down. How many people have lost their income, like, living wage. How many daily, there are people are depending on daily work, payment hawkers, daily businessmen, or making a daily wage, how they were impacted. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. You have
Yeah.
to keep very close. These are.
Okay, sorry. Fine. So how they were impacted. Apart from that, we look at the social aspect. Now companies have started working from home or remote working. How that has been successful. How their, the monitoring of their performance has been captured, whether it's successful or not. These are from the research point of view. No research has gone so far as to that. Then I see in the newspapers on a daily basis, domestic violence have increased. People working from home. The downside of working from home, because people were, they go to work every morning, but the reverse is the domestic violence. Employee wellness, the mental, the wellness, then the mental well-being. Those things we need to do an empirical research and find out how it has been impacted Sri Lanka or worldwide. I think McKinsey and the World Economic Forum, they are also doing research. But from a research point of view, what is the impact on the people, and what is the impact on the economy, and what is the impact of the total, the nation as well. So that is from a research point of view. You need to do empirical research and find out what is the total impact. I represent an industry where close proximity employees, it is close proximity, disruptions takes place because I represent hospitality industry. Quite rightly, our CEO, Dr. Samitra said, how hospitality industry, especially, are they facing challenges? Some of them actually, they were sort of, taking the opportunity. They converted their business models into, one is the delivery service, the home delivery service. And also people, the quarantine centers, they made, an opportunity for quarantine centers where the employment opportunities were granted again to the employees, because in the hospitality industry, as you know, the people are paid a very low basic salary. And as an incentive, with a team incentive, the service charge is paid. So now to see their disposable income, it has been brought down by 50% or lower. So how, we look after them. How do we make them comfortable to look after their families, etc. That's a challenge as well. So that is from a national point of view. My other approach as an HR director or HR professional, how do we look at this challenge? How do we manage people? Because some of them are asked to stay at home. Some of them are supposed to report to work. How do we, now companies are not earning, the business revenue. How do we pay their salaries? It's a big challenge. And then being at home, again, I said to you that their mental well-being, their wellness, etc., need to be looked into. And also now, when they send to these quarantine centers, if they're infected, etc., how do we focus on their well-being? Where are they taken? We need to have constant communication, etc. Then also, people have been asked to work remotely, but our employers are providing facilities such as, their equipment, laptops, work connectivity, etc. You can't simply ask people to work from home. You need to provide those facilities. So are they being provided? Even I see in the news, even the students they're finding difficult for network accessibility from the remote area. And some of the students, they are climbing the top of the mountain for data accessibility. You would have seen in the news. So these are some of the challenges. Even most advanced nation, there are another 20% of the people, they don't have even the network accessibility. So these are some of the challenges faced by, even though we speak about remote working, working from home, but these are some of the challenges we need to, from a research point of view, find out. These facilities are available or not. So we will, discuss HR challenges and other challenges, national challenges in detail in the next round.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay Kumar. I think since you are the current Vice President of CIPM, you have an implicit task of exploring that research area. So on one hand, this is organized by the Standing Committee of the Applied Research Center headed by Professor Prasadini. At the same time, you are bringing the industry perspectives and looking at diverse aspects, and you are trying to connect the education and larger livelihood aspects in the society. Thank you very much and let's explore the areas as you rightly said. So with that, in the first round, Mr. Allepol, before I hand over the mic, I want to tell you that along with this crisis, the statutory aspects, the legal aspects and the employers aspects have come to the spotlight now. I'm sure you would be touching upon in your opening remarks on that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samantha Ratnayaka. How I would like to approach the subject is on the basis of the challenges the employers faced during this crisis. I think everyone agrees that this was an unprecedented challenge that was not only limited to a country or a region, but the whole world was grappling with this issue at the same time. So that was something very unique where the whole world was disrupted. So in that kind of a environment, the challenges were unbelievable. So with regard to the employers or the businesses, the main challenge with this disruption was sustainability and job security. Those two were issues that they were grappling with, where they simply didn't have a way of coming out of it unless you face it and also look for solutions as to how we are going to take it through. Sustainability obviously will have a direct impact on the job security of employees in the employment perspective. So there is a very direct impact on the job security. So that was something which really brought in, because job security means ultimately there is an impact on the whole society of a country. So that was something where even the state and the employers and employees all were faced with this situation. So I will take a few minutes to visit the solutions or how the employers and the governments approach this in the context of the Sri Lankan context also, which I believe was more or less similar to all over the world. So if you look at the Sri Lankan context and from the perspective of a firm level or the company level, the main objective of the companies was, first thing was to look at the workforce protection. Now, as much as people might say workforce, how are we going to protect them when we don't generate revenue? But at the same time, the companies had to look at it, because one thing is there was no possibility for them to lose their skilled, knowledgeable workforce, which was a huge resource for the companies. At the same time, of course, there was a question whether they can sustain that kind of a workforce going forward. So it was a huge dilemma for the companies. But most of the companies, in order to safeguard the workforce, look towards the government with regard to the laws or how they can overcome this situation, because of the laws protect the employees, but this kind of a situation requires you to have some sort of flexibility, adjustment in the law for them to protect the employees. So they were looking towards the governments, the state, and even the unions or the employees. They realized in order to protect their jobs, we need to be flexible at this stage. So that was how everyone got together to approach this issue at that time. And I believe that was successful to a great extent in protecting jobs to a certain degree. So with that, the workforce protection, of course, in the Sri Lankan context, the Termination Act was also acted in a way because the payment of compensation also would have been a factor at this stage because the companies didn't have that kind of resources to look at. But in order to address that, the government also stepped in, union stepped in, and of course, I think one result of it was the tripartite agreement with regard to the wage, I believe, which helped the private sector actually to safeguard and protect the jobs of certain employees. Of course, they had to sacrifice their salary, but that was I think, kind of a situation where they had to compromise in order to safeguard the jobs. Either party had to sacrifice some of their the resources they used to get. So, but I believe to a great extent that was a successful success story. Along with that, so that is with regard to job protection. Along with that, the employers promoted work from home. Now, trying to promote work from home to address the issue, because you need to sustain and somehow keep it afloat. Again, the legal side, when you are working from home, what are the legal issues that come? Employers had to look at that. The working hours, whether you can, so the guidance employers required in relation to how they should be guided, whether the laws will be applicable, how it is applicable, what are the safeguards they need to have, occupational and safety issues at home. So all these things they were grappling with, and as an employers organization, we had to guide them and we had to give them advice as to how they should set up. So certainly, of course, there's no question about it that you need to fall in line with the law wherever your workplace is, but they also required some sort of flexibility here also with regard to overcome this situation. So that was another challenge as to how they should, and of course the working hours was an issue. Even from when you're working from home, there were stories about that they are being exploited. Some of the employees, whether they are going beyond the normal working hours and all that. So, but of course, as responsible employers, they were guided to fall in line with the requirements of the law of the country. So that was another matter that I want to highlight. Then, of course, this work from home, for certain sectors, it was working, like the ICT, insurance, finance, it was working. But for the agriculture, manufacturing, fishing, forestry, accommodation, that kind of industries, work from home did not work well for them because it was not practical for them to engage in them. Also, the wage subsidies, which I mentioned earlier, or co-funding of wages was something that the employers were looking at. Then income support for low income earners was something, because the low income earners, there was kind of, in the Sri Lankan context, if you look at, they engage in various other self-employment in work so that they can in some way cushion their living standards with low income that they get through employment. Now that was seriously affected, because they didn't have that self-employment opportunity any longer. So that was something that they had to look at, and the state intervention was required. Then, of course, the promote of digitization was also came along with this. The government level responses, as we know, the labor market related policy interventions, we requested the government to come in, so facilitate and promoting work from home, flexi working hours, and so on. And of course, the less government intervention on salary and other payments, where sometimes the allowances was an issue, because where you are trying to even finding it difficult to pay the salary, then comes the allowances. So there we had to get the government intervention to look at some sort of flexibility and some sort of understanding with the employees to come to some sort of a agreement. So that kind of approach from the government we requested, and that was then granting permission to delay contributions for EPF and ETF. For the legal requirement is you can't delay it beyond 30 days. So that kind of interventions was required by the government, and now actually even right now up to June, there is the government has given that permission to delay those payments. So the legal side of those had to, so we had to, in general, if I look at it, in general, the legal rigidities was an impediment for us to overcome this situation. So the state and the unions and the employees and the employers had to get together in a situation like this, work together to overcome this situation. And that was the approach we had to take even with regard to overcoming the legal impediments or the rigidities.
Thank you, Mr. Levola. So you have highlighted very clearly the sustainability and the job security aspect while highlighting these rigidities into the flexibility, or rather we call policy opening, policy shifts required, and we have touched upon a wide range of the current responses. So well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have set a very good opening along with the four panelists, and they have very clearly set the response recovery, and in line with, we are very much looking forward to explore the area of thriving aspect. But at the same time, as far as this discussion is concerned, we have come to the final, the second part, the last 30 minutes. In that sense, the symposium committee has opening for you to raise one or two questions. Of course, technical team has given me access here. So if you are very much concerned about bringing some one or two specific questions, of course, please share with the technical team. They will that will pass to me. Dear gentlemen, now as far as the symposium is concerned, from a research point of view, this is very much backed by so much of insights from multiple research which you are going to see in the afternoon. But from a study point of view, as far as topic is concerned, global crisis and the future of work, as Mr. Vijay Kumar also highlighted that the global reports such as World Economic Forum, McKinsey, you name it, the Dubai strategy paper, the MIT, in terms of the Deloitte papers, the PricewaterhouseCoopers paper, and from Sri Lanka, some of the economic, economic state of economies, that IPS documents, they all have given a lot of insights. Now, in the second round, before we look at the thriving aspect and the future aspect of what you have raised, since this is a research symposium, I would like to raise a quick question from the four panelists from their respective areas. I'm not following a sequential order, but Professor, may I ask from you, Professor Dharmasiri, now in your doctoral studies, you have looked at the HR at the top or at the top. So can you link those learning into the current context? From a research point of view, do you think that those currencies are still valid, like your findings are relevant to the research, the current context? Would you like quick?
Yes. I think Dr. Samanth, you are absolutely right, because the crisis demanded HR professionals to come to the forefront, and the realization of people factor. Some of the CEOs who were overly concerned about making money, neglecting the people factor, they had to sadly realize that people are important, and the emergence of employee well-being as a critical success factor for any organization. I think that's a great plus point for HR professionals. So now the CEOs have to talk to HR professionals. They have to work with HR, because employee well-being is the primary important thing, because lives matter more than the livelihoods. People first, economy next. So that message came very strongly, globally, regionally, locally, so that the rising recognition of people factor was a good impetus for human resource professionals from a non-strategic point of view to a strategic point of view to come forward to contribute strategically, crafting the right set of strategies, executing the right set of strategies. I think that is a huge opportunity for HR professionals to thrive, survive, and to add value.
Wonderful. Professor Dharmasiri, with that, Dr. Samita, now in your doctoral areas, you have been keep on telling at many fora this competency matter and the demand of the competencies to the forefront. I think it has, what is your take on the current context?
Dr. Sama, I think I really experienced the outcome of my research in practice in current world, you know. My research was how HR competencies of CEOs and impacting his performance and the organization performance in manufacturing environment. So I think it really fits in here. The CEOs, my outcome was CEOs who have got the HR competencies. I'm not talking about the qualification though, right? You know, qualification and the competencies is two different things, right? Talking about the HR competencies of CEOs has really helped the organizations to grow. Because you're really, yes, you're looking for your strategy, your financial acumen, your marketing perspectives, your sales perspective, your supply chain perspective, all are there, right? And those are all competencies that you require, driven by the other function set. So in this scenario, I would say really, it's as I said earlier, internally it's a people issue. And people can't work, you know, they can't execute, right? And the market, of course, you know, consumers can't reach and afford is another perspective. So internally, CEOs who can understand the people factors and along with the business strategy, and I'm sure, and it has really helped. And personally, it has helped me. Like, you know, I have seen the thinking of myself towards people, and then it's not the sympathy. I would say I'm wrong. Don't take wrongly when you say HR. It's a sympathize. No. And then HR is always about how do you really get your resources to really support your business and then get your value chain pie up and then benefit on that. And so that context, knowing HR, like, you know, having HR sense along with the business strategy is surely it has helped the current CEOs on that.
Thank you very much.
This is I would say my outcome is in action.
Yeah. So that you see the greater connection. With that, Mr. Vijay Kumar, you are representing CIPM, you are the current vice president. From a response recovery point of view, in this current crisis, how is the CIPM response and what is your take on in brief?
Okay, CIPM response on the current recovery process.
Yeah.
Say CIPM response is, you know, to educate and create awareness the HR professionals how to face the challenges. You know, I think challenges were mentioned by the other panelists. You know, how do we, look at, for example, look at the job descriptions. See, at current context, job description changes. There is no, say this is set job description because you face a crisis. You have to, earn money, the revenue. For example, from my industry, our senior management team went and delivered food. So there is there is no sort of ego, there's no limits or whatever. So, CIPM's role is to create awareness how do we work from, the remote working, rather remote working. It may be as one of the panelists said, some of the industries, you can't have remote working. Then we go for a hybrid working model. Some people go to office, some people work from home. So how CIPM can promote hybrid working model? Actually, now, most recently we had a joint seminar with SLIM, the Sri Lanka Institute of Marketing, and CIPM to create national awareness on hybrid working model. So CIPM role is to educate, create awareness among the HR professionals and also the other professionals. How do we face these challenges in the future? In terms about, I think we can later discuss in terms of reskilling, upskilling or reskilling, which is very, very important. So how CIPM can involve in reskilling and, the jobs which will go obsolete in time to come with AI, like, the data entry operators or the accountants or the cashiers, etc. So how do we reskill them to, become more AI-based, resources? Okay.
Thank you. Nice to hear those. Mr. Alipulap, in this quick question, as far as you are representing the EFC, the multiple organizations point of view, actually, what is the readiness level when you are seeing in overall?
That's a very good question, Samantha. this actually exposed all of us. The state, employers and workers, everyone. One thing we realized was that in a situation like this, to give an example, we didn't have a system or mechanism to address unemployment issues. We don't have a social security system to look at unemployment, temporary unemployment situations to because it is a situation where the employers also can't bear that burden. And then how are we going to then address? So this opened a kind of a whole exposed the whole the area where we are lacking in. The state intervention, the employers, all we realized that in a situation like this, in order for the businesses also to continue and sustain themselves, we need some sort of backing. So in that context, of course, the developed world, they have the unemployment benefits, they have also social security systems, and also the state can fund. Now, if you look at some of the countries during that time, the developed world, the economies, from their state resources, they paid salaries, a certain percentage of the employees' salaries, and then the unemployment benefit mechanisms are there. So that exposed us to a situation where are we? What are we going to do? Or in the future, at least should we have mechanisms? So in that context, actually, as EFC, what we did was we did a study with regard to the current social security system and whether we need to reposition that in order to address what is our return on investment. Can we have a better mechanism to cover situations like this? So that is the kind of proactive steps that we are taking with the involvement of the government. We are hoping to discuss those findings with the government and the other stakeholders, the unions, everyone, and at least bring in some sort of kind of structure for the future for us to face and address this kind of issues.
I'm sure in our final round, you can share a few insights out of that in this forum. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the most vital part in our discussion. That is the future aspect. Yes, we listened to all these panelists in terms of the response and recovery, but I'm sure the audience is looking for the future aspects, thriving aspects. In that light, the couple of questions, if you look at what they have said, asking about the culture, the readiness, the working from home, work-life balance, the well-being, the productivity of employees, and the employer's readiness, and managing these current challenges and the expectations. So all these questions are centrally discussing about these aspects. In that light, now I would say this the most important thing as far as discussion is concerned. The audience is looking at from these four gentlemen of yes, how to seize, how to address. So once again, back to Professor Dharmasiri in order. Now, Professor, in this, can you give a couple of key insights, or the four sides rather, how to seize, how to address, getting ready for the future? Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Samath. I think the primary thing we need to keep in mind is future is different to the past. So past success will not guarantee future success. So future belongs to those who create. So we have to create that new future by showing the resilience and having the revival. I think that's where this selected theme is very, very critical. And so let me thank Professor Prasadini and the team for selecting such a timely topic for this research symposium. So I would say the new learning, the new way of learning, the new approach to learning is very simple. They call it ATWD. Anytime, anywhere, any device. That is the future. So there's no standard, structured, stereotype classroom approach. Anytime, anywhere, any device. That is where we need to gear towards. So technology will play a critical role. So it has to be a tech-savvy approach. But at the same time, some of the psychological issues that we see in the current online way of learning, teaching, and so on, we see a lot of fatigue factor on one side. And we see a lot of monotony on the other side. So there has to be variety, there has to be creativity, there has to be gaming and other interesting creative way of making the technology-driven learning less monotonous and more enjoyable. So anytime, anywhere, any device is one key mindset shift that we need to have. So it is not the conventional learning, it is the non-conventional learning. I saw a recent research report where they have seen a huge rise in the demand for online MBA around the globe. So it's basically even increasingly expanding the rise of people enrolling in online MBA. So I see this with a cautionary view, because on one side you have greater access to learning, but at the same time, what about assurance of quality, the standard, the rigor, the relevance that we need to maintain? So there are challenges coming on one. Say on one side you get prospects, on the other side you get problems. So I think future is going to be more and more complex. So my simple take from all these scenarios that we see around us is that we need to show confidence in our approach and competence in action. So confidence, competence, combination will make the future better.
Anytime, anywhere, any device. Thank you, Professor. I think that's a wonderful thing. Dr. Samita, the stage is very clear. Audience is looking for what are the key messages to get ready for the future.
I think I'll bet on with the professor's remarks on that. So surely the future is not the past. Like, it differ country to country, industry to industry, and the profession that you are in. So I select HR as the audience here today. And so if you look at it, the HR profession is going to change because your business strategy is going to change in the future. And so hence that when you really want to support a business strategy, so your role of HR, and earlier would have been like, how do you craft policies and procedures in a more conducive manner to really get your strategy up or execute, probably would have been a role for you. But the elements have been now in a different environment, right? So how do you really get your skills up on that? How do you really see your future and your contribution, what you can make in that scenario is a key question. There are enough research reports, like, Harvard is there, research, Boston Group is there, McKinsey is there, right? PwC has done it, EY has done it. I mean, a lot of research papers are there for us to understand what's the future going to be. COVID is not going to be over. Probably like, you'll have another pandemic in this similar kind of, you're talking about Delta and all the other variances now, right? So this is not going to be over. This is going to be the future. And so this is a readiness what matters for you, like, how do you do that? So how do you do it now? See, it's not that you acquiring the qualifications only. And I always keep in this example, like, let's say a driver, having driving license doesn't mean that he can drive a vehicle. No, it's not getting the license, and it's getting your competency is right. So if you have the same example, like, when you see a bumpy road in another miles distance, or like, you have a disturbance in your road, and you must have the skills to really, how do you get your vehicle up? So that's a kind of a competency that you need to really develop for your future. But you got to do it now. And that professor was taking at anywhere, anytime, at any device, right? No, I mean, you are learning for future. It is in you. Organizations, I don't think that can help too much. They are busy on getting your strategy right. And, resources are really descaling now at this moment. And so your responsibility to survive in this kind of environment is up to you. And then don't wait for organization will pay 50%, therefore I'm going to stay home. And that's a worst scenario. And this country cannot stop, and if you stop, we will go worse. So what you need to, as a HR profession, what you need to do is, how do you create your mindset of your people? Be safe and contribute your value chain of your organization. And governments can't help on that. They can help, like as my UFC colleagues are talking about, they are creating the right platforms, delaying your payments, delaying your statutory payments, all been setting up that. But you got to use it now. And yes, you delay your payments and you still on the same place, not creating value, you will have the same problem in the 5 months' time. So you have to use this environment which supporting elements that giving us and get your people mindset right. So HR is shifting from a traditional, like, managing performance, breaking the performance appraisals, and you're getting your rewards strategy right, getting your other activities, those shifting on that. So it's a outside in. And Professor Ulrich recently has given the 6 dimensions of new HR. Read those things. And sometimes, you can really spell it out. You can really apply that in a current environment and reshape yourself. And that's what you should do as HR profession. And rather crying and say, look here, and we can't work, and then our employees are starving, and we don't have employment. I mean, see, look at the innovative ways of really manage this, survive yourself. And I'm sure if you have that thinking by yourself first, before you try to do it for others, and you have to do that for yourself as HR. I mean, no point that you try to lead somebody unless that you lead yourself. And so that's my message for all HR professionals.
Wonderful. I think getting the outside in perspective very clearly, then respond and craft it the way you want. And particularly, you are highlighting that the pandemic is a testing imperative for us to look forward in whatever the form. Mr. Vijay Kumar, now earlier you have responded very positively from CIPM and industry point of view. So what is your key message to the future of your readiness in terms of the messages? Yes.
Yeah, for the future, I think one of the research reports said, McKinsey, I think World Economic Forum, whatever, in most advanced nation, there is 85 million jobs will go obsolete, and 92 million new jobs will be created. So what do we take from that? So there are a lot of upskilling required for people to become more IT savvy, more, should be able to use more artificial intelligence. So how do we do that? Can only companies do that? Or organizations do that? It is a Herculean task. Or what is the government support you require? Through tertiary education, etc. How do we upskill these people? That is number one priority for the future. Also, from the CIPM point of view or the HR professional point of view, how do we, train, upskill the human resources who are currently doing more people proximity jobs to say, look at a cashier. A cashier can become the money is collected via, customers can pay the money through the cards, etc. So you only do the cashier. How do we change the cashier's career to a delivery specialist? So you need to look at different career paths for people. Looking at the new, new job role. So those are some of the challenges we need to look at: the new career paths, new kind of jobs. How do we upskill them? How to reskill them? So those are some of the challenges for the future. All the HR professionals, also, but from the government point of view as well, stated to spend money. Also the data availability or the network facility, not only in Sri Lanka, worldwide. I think you got to subsidize your satellite facility or whatever, you have to give ample data for people to become more data savvy. So those are the my key messages for the future. We need to look at very strongly.
So, Mr. Vijay Kumar, in essence, you are saying that the new demands for jobs come so that the new shapes of the skills requirements, so that I think CIPM can play a major role in that sense.
Of course.
Mr. Alapula, coming back to this futuristic point of view, I'm sure one question also I would like to highlight that very much questions have raised about this work from home and the new legal shape. I'm sure you have mentioned about that lot of policy readiness within this context. What you can share to the audience, they are very much eager on that.
I think all of us, we realize that the impact of this COVID will not subside in the near future. So we have to be ready and continue with this and adjust and innovate our businesses in a new way as to how we should continue and face this task. So there is no looking back and saying we will wait. So we need to go forward with these challenges. So how do we approach with this? We need to then see how the future is going to be with this kind of challenge being there. So there will have to be a greater transformation of the working environment in order to face this, because with this kind of pandemic being there, we'll have to transform our working environment to some other continue with our businesses. So in this context, we see 3 areas that definitely that there will be new transformation in 3 areas in the business world and the world of work. The first thing that I would like to highlight is the remote work and virtual interactions. So the remote work will not be now, before the pandemic, it was at a very low level. During the pandemic, it reached a higher level, but once or when it subsides, it will not be at that higher level, but it will be lower, but certainly it will be higher than what it was at the very beginning. That is, I believe, will be the kind of the prediction that they will be looking, because although the opportunity is there for remote work, I think the human factor, the human beings also want some sort of interaction, the teamwork, those aspects also are required in a working environment. So you can't have a kind of a system where you can totally be in a situation where you will be working in a remote kind of environment. But of course, there will be a blend of that going forward in a much higher degree than what it was at the very beginning. So that is what wanted. Then the e-commerce and digital transactions. There will be definitely, it has developed e-commerce and digital transactions during this period, and it will stay in the future. So there will be, so the jobs will be, as Mr. Jaykumar mentioned, the skilling, reskilling in these areas will be a requirement. The employees will have to reskill themselves, and the skills in these areas will be required in the future for us to look at these developments that are going to take place. Then development of automation and artificial intelligence will be there going forward, and that will be another area, the trend that will come in the future. The workers at the low end, we feel that the workers at the low end and with less skill will be the most vulnerable. So unless you reskill yourself and then adapt yourself, that vulnerability will remain, and that will be a challenge. But of course, the people at the higher end, the people knowledge with knowledge and the skills will take, those people will have more advantage and opportunities in the new world of work. So in this context, rethinking by businesses as to where and how work is done, new ways of hiring, training, redeploying, all that will be the topics or the subjects that we'll have to keep on discussing and be innovative. Just one example I just wanted to discuss or just bring out now is when this issue was taking place, one organization already, they asked in the future, they are looking at a workplace where they will have a blend of working from home and reporting to office. So in that context, now they say in the future, they will not have a particular workstation for an individual, because that person will be, so if everyone is coming to work, you will need a larger area because you report to work every day. But if a certain percentage are working from home, then the percentage that comes to office is only a lesser number. So in that context, how do we design our work area, the office? So they are contemplating of a kind of a work without having workstations to individuals, because that will give you more space and waste of space. They are going to have a kind of a office space where anyone can walk in and then you can plug into any workstation and work and go home. So that is the kind of future that we will see, or the changes in the working environment, offices and development that will take place, we believe, and that innovation will be required fast for us to adapt to this kind of a situation. Of course, along with that, the policymakers will also have to step in. Makers don't step in expanding digital infrastructure in the country, enabling more labor market flexibility for removing barriers for worker mobility, reskilling, upskilling, workers facing job transition. So those flexibilities will be required from the policymakers that we are looking at. And of course, the facilitating the gig economy and platform economy. Now, when the platform economy or gig economy is coming, I think what we need to do as a country is let that develop in this country. If we bring in rigidities and try to first let it develop, then we can look at the laws and whatever the safeguards that we need to bring in to protect them. Certainly, yes, we do need to protect the employees and their rights and all. But first, we need to let it develop, let the business develop, let that environment be created. That is how the developed world worked initially. So I think that lesson we need to take it forward. If we are to go forward as a country and as a nation, we need to allow or create that environment for businesses to create rather than trying to suppress it, bring in rigidities, and that will certainly not give any kind of encouragement for the businesses to go forward. So that's the kind of future I see and for the work, and I think that is where we have to, all of us will have to get together to promote and take it forward.
Thank you very much. I think in essence, we need a lot of policy trade-offs. That's what you are highlighting. So along with that, dear gentlemen, I want to say that this is an intriguing topic, as I said at the inception, but the challenge is the time. So all these questions, most of the areas we have addressed. So we have come to the last 4 minutes, may I say. In your final round, probably just 1 minute, but you may very briefly address your final thoughts apart from all what we have said. But Professor Dharamsiri, you can touch upon a bit of engagement aspect also in the futuristic point of view in your final remarks.
Okay, I would say human resource professionals have to be holistically revived professionals. You can't confine to the human resource function. You have to look at the big picture. You have to be much broader in looking at the broad horizon. So that is the message for human resource professionals. You have to be holistic, humble, and of course, humane as usual. And then, as you said, the engagement aspect, physical, mental, emotional dimensions, how to ensure in a virtual team. Now, in a physically located team, it's easy because you see the feel factor is there. Now, the challenge is to develop trust without touch. So that's a huge challenge. You need to have interactions using social media, variety of technology platform, not just formal, but becoming informal. And I have seen some HR professionals having virtual boozers. Occasionally that will help. So some kind of that informality has to be built in, because if you have a typical meeting, Dr. Samantha, we have a chit chat over a Kit Kat. We have some gossip and sometimes the government bashing, the president bashing, they have become the national habits. So you need that relaxation in the middle of a serious conversation. So with technology, with Zoom meetings, otherwise it will be just a doom, not a boom. So we need to have that balance between formality and informality, the balance between seriousness and fun-loving nature. So that is the typical complex human beings, how they behave. So we need to recognize people, we need to relate people's requirements, and we need to achieve results as holistically revived profession.
Thank you very much, Professor Dharamsiri. Dr. Samita, in your final remarks, while you are addressing your final thought, one question highlighted that if you can share one practice or a tip about how to respond to outside in approach through inside out.
Thanks, Dr. Samantha. As I said earlier, like the current situation could be an opportunity driven or a survival move, right? As a business. So then once you craft your strategy as a business together as a senior team, this is our strategy to really capture the opportunity, or this is our strategy to really survive in this game. That has to be done. Otherwise, your employees will be really lost in their game, right? Once you get your strategy, then you will have a model to operate. And this is a model that we need to operate. So you are starting from your market. This is how you're going to operate. And then comes your business model. This is what that business need to be done. And then you come down to the straight of what kind of a structure that we want, what kind of resources that we want really allocate for this, and I need that. And along with that, when you say resources, that how capable these resources are for the new model that we are going to operate. So that could be AI, like you are talking about very much predictive driven kind of a scenario. Could be a blockchain approaches, and many more, like probably you totally automate your process. An example that you may not have your traditional channels of distribution, you may go for online kind of stuff, or you have another way of door-to-day stuff, right? Door-to-door stuff. I mean, this start from the market. And the market, I would say, the understanding the market, your business strategy, like as per the Porters, if I bring the theory here, you have whether you're going to be your cost driven or value for money or your niche, right? And are you going to be really gourmet situations like customize your products, right? There are opportunities. I would say people are now fed up in food industry, have a customer, standardized product. They would probably go for a very much customized. I have a wedding, or I have a really lunch at home. I like to get this menu done. So it's becoming customized. Your industry is changing. So then your business model, strategy and the business model and the people to drive it and your capability to get it. So of course, then all other jargon we are talking will come into play.
Thank you very much. I think you have covered very well. Thank you very much. Mr. Vijay Kumar, from a future point of view, what is your take-home message? Now you have highlighted that reskilling and so on. So you can highlight, because there's a question about that, how to do that, what is the starting point and so on. So you may touch upon in your final.
Yeah, the starting point for reskilling to identify as per each company requirement, each organizational requirement, what jobs is going outdated or what jobs will be sort of obsolete, what will be the new role they be taking over. So as per that, you identify the need, then you are plan to reskill. Also in the national level, if you look at CIPM, also we need to offer new programs such as AI use in HR, use of AI in HR, or robotic automation process. How do we implement? So to become they become entrepreneur. Now one of the panelists was speaking about gig economy. Now how the millennials they come out with how do they contribute? They'll create a mobile app or a intervention. Even we could reskill the millennials or anyone. They could be able to do a job by being in Sri Lanka, offering a job in any other part of the world. So we need to make those people IT savvy. So that's the reskilling I'm talking about. How do we sort of globally they contribute, wherever location they are stay, wherever whatever location they will be there, but so that gig economy will also require reskilling and upskilling. So the starting point is, one is from the organizational point of view, identify the needs in keeping with the organizational objectives and the strategy. From a national point of view, how the government should look at the education system, how do we take this reskilling and upskilling, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay Kumar. Going back to your thoughts from an HR professional's point of view, Mr. Alipur, what are the key critical points which you like to highlight apart from all what you have said?
I think the HR and also the employment whole gamut of it ultimately hinges on the country's policies and the adaptive, how fast we can adapt to the current situation. So in relation to policies, I think there are certain things that we need to urgently address in the current context. If we are looking at the next, with this COVID, the future of work, we have tried to promote certain legislative policy changes like flexible working hours, remote working in relation to remote working, the leave holiday and that kind of new, if you look at the other countries, Singapore or Malaysia, those countries, they have developed to accommodate that kind of flexibility that is required for part-time work and flexible work arrangements. Along with these technological developments that are taking place, we need to adapt ourselves and quickly come up with those changes if we are to be competitive in the region and also in the world. So that will help the HR aspect of every organization for them to face this challenge and take it forward. But otherwise, it will be quite, although we might devise our HR policies and mechanisms, that has to be supported with the policies and the legal framework of the country. So I believe that kind of holistic approach is required for us to go forward and be competitive in the world and also especially in the region. And that is the only way that I believe we can go forward in challenging these times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hats off to the four panelists. I'm sure, as I said at the inception, this topic, the nature, the intriguing nature is not ending. They keep on exploring. I'm sure they have added a lot of the colors and insights for you to look around and keep on looking this topic, the global crisis, more than that, the future of work. While thanking the organizing committee, standing committee chair, the conference chair, Professor Prasadini, and the team. So while thanking to the four panelists, let's go back to the MC. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samantha Ratnayake, for our moderator, and to all our viewers who have been staying tuned for a very long time. We appreciate, we are very proud with the numbers that have been staying tuned right throughout. And we are about to conclude the panel discussion. But before that, I'd like to invite the chairperson of the 5th CIPM International Research Symposium, Professor in Human Resource Management, University of Kelaniya, Sri Lanka, Professor Prasadini Gamage, to present a token of appreciation to our panelists and our moderator. First, we'd like to recognize Professor Ajantha Dharmasedi. Next, we'd like to invite Dr. Samita Pereira. Dr. Samita Pereira. And to our panelists, Mr. Ken Vijay Kumar. Our panelist, Mr. Vajra Alepola. And our fantastic moderator here, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Samantha Ratnayake. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Prasad.